Cora, yeah, Cora, yeah, Cora, yeah, Hey family, I'm SNwadiei. I'm Habasia, helping your brothers and sisters in Africa. And y'all, for those who don't know, I'm so excited that I have more than 100 subscribers. So YouTube unlocked my community page where I could put posts and surveys so I could interact more with my subscribers and I guess people out in the public too. But anyway, my subscribers know that I am the Creole grilltist. You know, my relatives come from Louisiana on my mama's side, on my daddy's side, Texas mostly. Other places too, but the last place was Texas because that's where my dad was born, in the same place as myself, Galveston, Texas. So we are BOIs, born on the island, have something in common, even though y'all, I never met him in person. He was already deceased when I tracked him down by what? DNA. I thought I'd never know who my quote real daddy was. Because who was supposed to be my dad, that I thought was my dad since I was 5 years old, I just thought he was a deadbeat dad. Come to find out, the poor guy just had a mad romantic love for my mother forever that he just took with him to the nursing home and tried to take it to his grave. But I just begged him for him to do that DNA test, and he was gracious enough to do it, knowing their secret would be told. And it said I was not even his cousin, not related to him at all. It was the JID match, or whatever match. I can't even think of what the name of it was. I have the little receipt for it, but anyway, it's the one where you find out if it's the daddy or not the daddy. And it's supposed to be one of the better tests that's over the counter to prove paternity. But anyway, that test said no, I was not even related to him. So anyways, I believe in the DNA test I took, which was several, I mean lots, over years. I took the National Geographic genome test back in the day when they was tracking down people just by genome groups, and I was a L2, you know, because the L2, L2, yeah. Like the second oldest people on the planet, the L1s are the little people that people mislabel as pygmies. So my relatives was the second oldest people, you know. So anyways, I'll tell you more in detail of that another day. Because anyways, I do think I have some history of everything on the walls and all, but I don't want to digress too much. But anyways, I just want y'all to know I've taken a test for the genome group. Then I turned around and took other tests to, quote, prove my indigenousness to this country. It said that if you had any African ancestry that you shouldn't take the test. But for my grandmother's sake, I took it anyway. And it said I wasn't indigenous at all because it's a percentage that they're looking at when they're telling the results. But then I redid the test at later stages in my life, like lately with Ancestry, 23andMe, and I have up to 1.5% indigenous. and it may not be all in the United States. They add the indigenous from North and South America. Because, you know, our ancestors came through the Middle Passages, and sometimes they might have stopped off in South America before they got put back on a boat and brought over to the Middle Passages and then the United States. They had a long, hard road to get to the United States. But anyway, the reason why I brought this up was because on a comment that was released, all I asked was, are you interested in traveling to the motherland? And I asked what country. So one of the people that responded was very hostile with me. And they told me that they're not Africans, that they came from the South, Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, etc. And then turned around and put an exclamation point on the end, like they was like shouting at me, you know, that we from the South, you know. And I'm like, why would somebody that don't know me try to disprove facts? It's like, what is their problem, you know? So in the backward and forward to me responding to the comments, I was saying that my family was so African that I even had a grandmother with an African retention name of Cora, which is a surname in the Gambia. And that person responded saying that didn't mean anything because Cora was a name that anybody could have. They even have Coras in their family, and he know, or they know, because I don't even know if the person was male or female. You know, people can use any kind of name on the internet. Doesn't mean their gender at all. But anyway, they said that they knew that Caucasian's name, Cora, so they didn't mean that they came from Africa. And you don't accept your European DNA. And I said, I do not accept it because it was involuntary. And so then that person followed up with, oh, they had slave breeding camps. Well, I know that because on my paternal side, my cousin did research and said, yeah, some of our ancestors were, born on breeding farms. So he equated somebody who's born on a breeding farm that's considered a non-human, that has no choice in the matter. He's calling them a rapist. So I had already said I didn't want to keep discussing it, and it just wouldn't stop, so I had to block him, y'all. It's nothing I can say when people won't believe facts. The DNA test I took was so good. The Ancestry.com, the 23andMe, the African ancestry. They were so good that my uncle came up as my close relative. My son came up as my son. My first cousin came up as my first cousin. My second cousin, who is my first cousin's child, and that first cousin didn't even take the test, and still came up as my second cousin. And that's more than one time that this happened. And this is on more than one DNA site. Because like I said, I took several, guys. And when I'm saying motherland, I'm saying from the mother's side of the family. Because according to African ancestry and the way the slavery rules worked, the child was whatever the mother was. So the mother had to be African in the first place, or they wouldn't have been enslaved. African and enslaved, and the child would be that, even if the other person was of a whole different ethnic group. But anyway, guys, this is my African ancestry results from my maternal DNA. And it says that I'm T-Car from Cameroon. I'm just trying to leave it long enough for you to see. Okay, so that's T-Car from Cameroon. So when I say motherland, I'm going by my maternal ancestry. Because you know, all of my stories are my stories. So when I'm saying motherland, I'm talking about Africa. That's saying T-Car from Cameroon. Cameroon is right next to Nigeria. Nigeria and Cameroon has a border put there by the West when they was dissecting Africa, when they was getting ready to colonize everybody. So anyways, and then for somebody to say that it's a false report of the DNA by saying that the Nigerian aspect is wrong. It's like, how could somebody who's not a geneticist, say that they got it wrong? Like, how is that possible when they have all type literature talking about Nigerians being enslaved and brought to the Americas? So anyway, guys, I'm going to just share just a little reading with y'all. And about that part about somebody that's not African having the name Cora, even though Cora is a surname in the Gambia and Senegal, and probably Mali too, because all of those little countries are all together, and they use the Cora instrument. It's mostly the Mandinka people that use that Cora instrument. But anyway, let's just say, even if it's true about somebody European having that name, okay. My name is Stephanie. That does not stop Stephanie from being a Greek name. I looked up Stephanie, and it said crown. And you see the person out there. Don't look nothing like me. And it says Stephanie is a female name that comes from the Greek name Stephanos, meaning crown. The male form is Stephen. So it does not stop the name being Greek just because somebody of African descent has it. Does not stop Cora being an African name, a surname at that, when the myth was that Africans didn't have surnames. Yes, they did. And I found that out when I went to the Gambia doing my research for the meaning of Cora. That's all I was trying to do, find the meaning of Cora. I had no idea that it was a family surname when I got there. I just thought it was an instrument, y'all. That's all I thought it was. But anyways, this is one that's talking about the slave trade, Nigeria, table of contents, because I was just trying to find something that could be a quick read for y'all, and I will leave y'all the link at the bottom. And I have a collectible to relate to this story that I'm telling. And I know it's not one that's so funny, but I think sometimes it's necessary for us to talk. I have more information that I printed up, but hopefully some of y'all will follow me to Patreon and we can have long, intelligent discussions about things like that, because I could share the information with a link and we can all read it first and then discuss it in a live forum. That would be cool, with like-minded people. I don't mind people having different ideas, but to discount me when it's my channel, y'all, that ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work. But anyway, okay, I was looking up this stuff about Nigerians. It says the slave trade. Nigeria, the slave trade, because that's what I looked up. It says a desire for glory and profits from trade, missionary zeal, and considerations of global strategy brought Portuguese navigators to the West African coast in the late 15th century. Locked in a seemingly interminglable crusading war with Muslim Morocco, the Portuguese conceived of a plan whereby maritime expansion might bypass the Islamic world and open new markets that would result in commercial gain. They hoped to tap the fabled Sahara gold trade, establish a sea route around Africa to India, and link up with the mysterious Christian kingdom of Presta John. The Portuguese achieved all these goals. They obtained access to the gold trade by trading along the Gulf of Guinea, establishing a base at Elmina, the mine on the Gold Coast, which is now called Ghana. They made their way into the Indian Ocean, militarily securing a monopoly of the spice trade. Says even the Christian kingdom turned out to be real. It was Ethiopia. Although Portuguese adventurers there turned south very quickly, Portugal's lasting legacy for Nigeria, however, has its initiation of the transatlantic slave trade. It says by 1471, Portuguese ships had reconnoitered the West African coast south as far as the Niger Delta, although they did not know that it was the Delta. And in 1481, emissaries from the King of Portugal visited the court of the Oba of Benin for a time. Portugal and Benin maintained close relationships. Portuguese soldiers aided Benin in its wars. Portuguese even came to be spoken at the Oba court. Guato, the port of Benin, became the depot to handle the peppers, ivory, and increasingly numbers of slaves offered by the Oba in exchange for coral beads, textiles imported from India, European manufactured articles, including tools and weapons, and manillas, which is brass and bronze bracelets that were used as currency and also were melted down for objects of art. Portugal also had been the first European power to import cowrie shells, which were the currency by the far interior, of the far interior. It said Benin profited from its close ties with the Portuguese and exploited the firearms brought from them to tighten its hold on lower Niger area. Two factors checked the spread of Portuguese influence and continued expansion of Benin. However, Portugal stopped buying pepper because of the availability of other spices in the Indian Ocean. From the growth of the war was to become the major export from Nigeria coast for 300 years. Benin continued to capture slaves and to employ them in its domestic economy, but the Edo state remained unique among Nigerian polities in refusing to participate in the transatlantic slave trade. In the long run, Benin remained relatively isolated from the major changes along the Nigerian coast. And it says the Portuguese initially brought slaves for resale on the Gold Coast, where slaves were traded for gold. For the reason, the southwestern coast of Nigeria and neighboring parts of the present-day Republic of Benin, not to be confused with the Kingdom of Benin, became known as the Slave Coast, where the African coast began to supply slaves to the Americas in the last third of the 16th century, and Portuguese continued to look to the Bight of Benin as one of the sources of supply. By then, they were concentrating activities on the Angolan coast, which supplied roughly 40% of all slaves shipped to the Americas throughout the duration of the transatlantic trade, but they always maintained a presence on the Nigerian coast. Says the Portuguese monopoly on West African trade was broken at the end of the 16th century when Portugal influence was challenged by the rising naval power of the Netherlands. The Dutch took over Portugal's trading station on the coast of the sources of slaves for the Americas. And they said Nigeria kept its important position in the slave trade throughout the great expansion of the transatlantic trade. After the middle of the 17th century, slightly more slaves came from the Nigerian coast than from Angola in the 18th century, while in the 19th century, perhaps 30% of all slaves sent from the Atlantic coast came from Nigeria. Over the period of the whole trade, more than 3.5 million slaves were shipped from Nigeria to the Americas. Most of these slaves were Igbo and Yoruba, with significant concentrations of Hausa, Ibibio, and other ethnic groups. In the 18th centuries, two polities, Oyo and Aro Confederacy, were responsible for most of the slaves exported from Nigeria. The Aro Confederacy continued to export slaves through the 1830s, but most slaves in the 19th century were product of the Yoruba Civil War that followed the collapse of Oyo in the 1820s. And the thing about it was, all of the time these people was having the African retentions of the Yoruba spiritual expression, hashtag voodoo. All of these things was following through from South America, the Caribbean, all the way into the United States. And they still have some of these practices to this very day. Okay. And it says, the Oyo and Aro Confederation were major trading partners of the slave traders from Europe and North America. And that's the ones in Nigeria. So that's who was the major trading partners of slave traders from Europe and North America. So yes, Nigeria did have enslaved people coming to North America. And that was easy, just did a Google search and found it easily, y'all. And it just was under Nigerian and slave trade. And then it said, what part of, and then this one came from the History Channel. I'll put the links in the comment section. But this one came from the History Channel. And it said, what part of Africa did most enslaved people come from? And it said, though exact totals will never be known, the Atlantic slave trade is believed to have forcibly displaced some 12.5 million Africans between 17th and 19th century. Some 10.6 million survived the infamous Middle Passage across the Atlantic. though descendants of these enslaved Africans now make up considerable segments of the population in the United States, Brazil, and many Caribbean islands. Written records of these ancestors' origins are difficult, if not impossible, to find. But the DNA is there, y'all. Through extensive research, however, scholars have been able to make educated guesses about where many of the enslaved people brought to the New World originated, y'all. No matter how long they was in this country, they still originated from somewhere, you know. So it says, enslaved people brought to the United States represented about 3.6% of the total number of Africans transported to the New World, or around 388,000 people, considerably less than the number of transported to colonies in the Caribbean, including more than 1.2 million to Jamaica alone. But they worked them to death, y'all. Or to Brazil. Of those Africans who arrived in the United States, nearly half came from two regions. Gambia, which is where my grandmother's name comes from. Gambia, the area comprising the Senegal and Gambia rivers and the land between them are today's Senegal, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Mali, and West Central Africa, including what is now Angola, Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Gabon. The Gambia River, running from the Atlantic into Africa, was a key waterway for the slave trade at its height. About 1 out of every 6 West Africans, enslaved people, came from this area. It says, in addition to the nearly 50% of the total number of enslaved Africans in the United States from these two regions, a considerable number of enslaved people had their origins in West Africa nation of Ghana, which is that's in my DNA too, y'all, as well as neighboring parts of the Wind Coast, now Ivory Coast. Others originated in the Bight of Biafra, including parts of present-day eastern Nigeria and Cameroon, y'all. I'm not making this up. It's from the History Channel. An inlet of the Atlantic on Africa's western coast that was a hub of extensive slave dealing operations. And also had this Enrique A. Condero, which, as I say, I will give y'all the links to this so y'all can read it for yourself. But I'm just reading y'all some. And I'm sorry, I should have started off with the middle one first from the History Channel. I hope I didn't lose that many people with the first part of this. If I don't get that many people watching, I promise I will have to just redo this. But I just wanted to share this with y'all. It says, Black History Month, Nigerian Atlantic Slave Trade. And this is supposed to be it's a really short read, y'all. It says, according to some authorities, the transatlantic slave trade started in Nigeria towards the end of the 15th century. And it has been estimated that approximately 10 million or more Africans was brought to the Americas between the 16th and 19th century. Those bought as slaves were caught during the coastal raids by the slave traders. However, this method did not yield the number of slaves wanted. As a result, the slave traders resorted to making business arrangements with a few Nigerian groups, such as the Aro that I was talking about in the first article, a subgroup of the Igbo people, the Oyo, and the Hausa. So they were 5 main European nations that participated in the slave trade. Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, the Dutch, France, and the British Empire. It's said that the Dutch were the most prolific of the slave traders. The slave trade skyrocketed during the 17th century because of sugar, because people like sugar in their what? Coffee And you know, too much sugar spoiled the coffee. I put coffee cream in there. Now I might have put too much coffee cream. But anyway, I'll figure it out later. I might have to start over. But anyway, says, as a result, the slave traders resorted to making business arrangements with a few Nigerian groups, such as the Arrow, a subgroup of the Igbo people, the Oyo, and the Hausas, which is what we was talking about. I was talking about in that first article. Say they were five main European nations that participated, and we covered that. Says a huge portion of slaves were distributed throughout South, Central, North America, and the Caribbean. Various studies indicated that between 15 and 25% of all slaves never made it across the ocean. In other words, 1,500,000 to 2,500,000 men, women, and children died in these voyages. Say a substantial number of Americans can trace their roots to Nigeria. And I'm going to repeat that, y'all. It says a substantial number of Americans can trace their roots to Nigeria, and in many cases to the Yoruba people. This was due to the fact that a large number of slaves brought to the Americas were Igbo, like my last name, Yoruba, or Hausa. Of these three groups, the Yoruba made the greatest impact in South America, the Caribbean, and North America. With the Yoruba spiritual expression and Buddha. Slave traders often mixed the different ethnic groups so that they could not communicate effectively, y'all. That's what they did. They forced us to mix so we couldn't speak our languages. That's why we didn't retain our languages. I know some of the Gullah Geechee people can talk to people in different parts of the motherland. But I'm just talking about people in general. And this article is talking about people in general. So it says, slave traders, again, often mixed the different ethnic groups so they could not communicate efficiently among themselves. And they would split up families as well as individuals from the same village, a strategy used to prevent uprisings. Of all the slave traders, the Spanish tended to keep the slave groups intact, including family groups. This allowed the Yoruba slaves to keep a large degree of their culture, including their religion and language. The Yoruba religion not only survived, but flourished throughout South America, the Caribbean, and North America. Mostly Louisiana, y'all. I'm just saying. And when we could not practice it, we still kind of practice it with Voodoo. Going to Catholic church by day and then going to the readers, like going to the doctor's office, That's just how it was, Shay. It was all closeted stuff. They didn't want nobody to know because people are so judgmental. They may be doing it themselves, but they definitely don't want you to be doing it, So anyways, it says, there was one factor that allowed this to happen, and this was the fact that the Yoruba religion had a tremendous amount of parallels with what? The Catholic religion. So, while the Spanish slave masters demanded that they convert to Catholicism, the Yoruba were able to fool them by setting up altars with the cross and statues of various Catholic saints whose stories echoed those of the Yoruba pantheon. Says the Yoruba religion seemed to be more of the henotheistic belief system in which the followers recognize one supreme being, the Most High, or Creator, while accepting other lesser deities that are often seen as intermediaries between the supreme being and the people. The Yoruba religion recognizes Olorum and Olodumare as the creator of all things. They also make obeisances to other orishas and the intermediaries between human beings and the creator. The orishas are also intricately connected to the elemental forces of nature, and this parallel many ancient beliefs practiced in Europe. In fact, the stories told regarding many of the orishas parallel those of the Catholic saints. The Yorubas of Nigeria, as well as many other African ethnic groups, have enriched our culture through music, food, and dance. Much of the music that we enjoy today came about from African influences, including the guitar, the banjo, the harp. This is the drums, and I could keep going, y'all. Says this is but a small sampling of the incredible, significant contributions made by the slaves and their descendants that was brought to the New World, and a substantial part of the diversity that has made the Americas a unique and culturally rich region of the world. And that was, they had it set up there for Black History Month. So I will leave all the links in the box. And I hope it wasn't too boring for y'all. I just had to let y'all see that when we talk about having DNA, like me, with one of the DNA results, 23andMe, and I'm not getting reimbursed by none of these people. I have a 100% DNA ancestor. And my cousin on my dad's side is so African, like 90, he gotta be like 94% African, and my son is like 97% African. He's a male, guys. If I gotta be that much African, that's why I claim my dad is Gullah Geechee. That's the only people I know in the United States that was that much African, Not just African retentions, we retained the DNA. I cannot talk for everybody else, but those articles did, and that was just a tip of the iceberg, y'all. It's so many records out there. Even I didn't know that my ancestry could be traced with records. Our records go all the way back to a little girl that was enslaved and has all her records and everything, and says when she became free and the name of her children and all of that, and who the children were thought to be, from, and all of that kind of stuff. I didn't know that our family history went back that far in writing, All I can say is I appreciate the DNA test, and I know you cannot be selective about saying which part of the DNA test you believe and not, especially not about Nigeria. It is too much documentation from what I even read, y'all, that says that lots of us from the United States have Nigerian ancestry. When I met and married my husband, I did not know anything about any DNA results. It's just, I guess, my spirit just cried out to go back home. And when I went to Nigeria and I got off that plane, it just felt like something inside of me was saying, we made it. We made it. And I just felt so much at peace, And so when I talk about going back home, I'm talking about West Africa. I've gone to East Africa to visit with a group. It was SEHA in Houston, which is an African martial arts group of, it's children and adults. And I was like just one of the little, whatever, the little people that come and it be the little group helpers, adults that help guard the children, the little guardians. That's what I was, one of those people. But anyways, when I was in the East, I know I have a little East African DNA. So I know when I saw all of that stuff that happened, also the slave trade that happened in East Africa, it also applied to a small percentage of my ancestors. The ones that are the strongest that cried out to me was from Gambia region. And that's how I end up going back there, y'all, researching my grandmother's name. And now from even just what I could read, y'all, it's saying, yeah, lots of people from the Senegal, Gambia area did come to the United States. So the documentation is there, y'all. It's in paper and it's in the DNA. So anyway, y'all, I'm going to leave that alone for tonight. And I don't want nobody arguing with me about these articles. I'll share the documents with y'all, but argue with somebody else. Because I just am not going to argue documentation of science. And I'm just talking about my DNA. Because I'm just telling y'all my stories. That's why I don't even use nobody else's stories. You know, I just use those people's articles just as a background for my story, y'all. But anyway, I know y'all like story time, so here we go. This is Annie Lee, and it is what? Jumping the Broom, y'all. And I didn't know anything about Jumping the Broom until I saw that movie, Roots. Because my relatives never talked about any Jumping the Broom. I think it might have been some little small group. I researched it and found out that for the most part, the people that was enslaved did not think of that their quote owners, captors forced them to do that because they didn't want them to legally get married. So even though they might have the little Holy Bible in their hand, you know, and you know, this is just artistic from the artist's point of view. Because I don't know if the bride would have had that type clothing during the slavery time. I don't know. Because it's pretty fancy looking. But who knows? Maybe the owner was being nice for a day. I don't know. But anyway, very detailed work. And it's from Annie Lee. And it says SAS class, Annie Lee. And it's called Jumping the Broom. But anyways, I heard that the reason they jumped that broom is because their owners, masters, whatever, made them do it. Like they say, the devil made me do it. Well, the owners made them do it. And that they did not like it one darn bit. They wanted to get married just like everybody else. Have legal documentation. But that would mean that they was human beings who had rights. And not just at the whim of their owner that they could jump the broom and be exclusively interacting and reproducing children. That could still be so. But anyway, y'all, lots of detail in it. Annie Lee, just trying to get out of the way so y'all can see better. But Annie Lee, Jumping the Broom, lots of detail. Lots of detail, y'all. All I can say is our poor ancestors, they had a hard life, y'all. They made it, though. And that's the only way I'm telling you my story is because my ancestors made it. Doesn't matter that they didn't know where they came from because of brainwashing, y'all. And it's just so sad that people in 2021 are still brainwashed and think that the South is a country. It's like, where are you from? I'm from the South, you know. I'm not from Africa. I'm from the South. Yeah, the South is my motherland. Like, what? The South is your motherland? How is the South your motherland? It's not a country. You know, the last time somebody thought of the South as a country, it was during the Civil War, guys. The Civil War. The North and the South wanted to separate. So slavery could still happen. It just was a war of economics. That's all. The South was having all the money because they had all of this unpaid labor, making money off of us. But anyway, guys, until next time, all I can say is have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace, peace, power to the people. And I'm out, y'all. Bye.